Hello, welcome to the stream. My name is Psychometal, and I deeply apologize for being late. I had a new encounter and seen problem, but it'll get resolved later. So that's okay. I don't know if I should play the background music for this since I want to make sure that I'm heard, but let's see if I can play it quick. Down. There we go. Alright, so now I should definitely be heard. Okay. So, how this stream is going to be done is basically I'm going to demonstrate the different applications of Krita's assistant tool. Now, why am I starting off with the assistant tools first instead of, say, something related to the fundamentals, drawing and painting? Well, that's because you have to actually know how the tools you're going to use work before you actually learn how to, before you use them, you learn how to do the other stuff like drawing anatomy, applying perspective, and so on and so forth. Now, the reason why I'm starting off with another reason why I'm starting off with the assistant tools is because they're a lot easier to, no, I shouldn't say that. They ease the transition from not knowing how to make compositions and applying basic fundamentals of drawing and painting, like rendering, forms, and applying rules of thirds and all that. Pretty much the assistant tools will help with that for anyone that doesn't have the necessary eye-to-hand coordination or doesn't understand how to set those things up and say a sketch or thumbnail sketch for that matter. So hence, to make that process easier, we'll just use the assistant tools starting off. Alright, so that's enough of an introduction. Or not an introduction, explanation. So, I was going to make this into a tutorial video, but it honestly doesn't, that's just not really my style, especially since I've already taught at a school, elementary school. Pretty much trying to read off of a script on how to do this and that doesn't sound very practical. So, nonetheless, here we are. Now, first thing I wanted to try teaching is how to use the ellipse and concentric ellipse tools and perspective ellipse tool. So, let's start that off. Or let's start with that. Okay, so let's go to this right here. So in the list of, or the toolbar rather, this is where my toolbar docker is. And for everyone else, you can pretty much move the toolbar docker however way you want to. Oops. Oh. Yeah, I'm messing this up. Okay, I totally look like I know what I'm doing. Well, that's one of the cool things about Krita is that you can move the dockers around however way you want to. But that could also be frustrating if, say, you have your layout exactly the way you want it, and then something happens where you accidentally do something and then now it's all messed up. Okay, okay, wow, that is terrible. Okay. Do this over here. And basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this. Why doesn't the toolbar docker not want to move? There we go. And let's move this back below, here, here. Okay, that up. And move that down. Okay, there we go. I got it all moved back where I had it. Sorry about that. So, this right here, that's what I wanted to point to. This is the assistant tool icon. Click on this. And what happens is, over here on the tool options docker, pull this out. So in the tool options docker, under the add category, you have a drop down list of different. Why is it not showing up in OBS? Hold on. It's pointless if you can't see it. I'll probably have to make a separate capture. Cool. No, that's not coming. Let's capture. Okay. Wow, it really does not want to. OBS does not want to capture that. Not unless I do a display capture, but I don't like doing that. Okay, so let me move it back then. So it appears there, but it won't appear here for some reason, and it won't look at it because it's not an executable file. Still see the drop-down menu? No, you can't. Okay. Well, let me just demonstrate the different categories then. So under this category box here, where it says add, there's a drop-down menu. I know you can't see it, but here's the different options. So the first one at the top is 2-point perspective. We'll deal with that later. That's we're not doing that right now. Second option is concentric ellipse. Now, the third option is ellipse. So what's the difference between concentric and ellipse? What's the difference between concentric ellipse and regular ellipse? Let me explain that after I get done going off perspective ellipse as well. Here's perspective ellipse. You have 3 different ellipse options, and the basic one is called ellipse, just regular ellipse here. So let me demonstrate how you're supposed to use this. You can just use the mouse. You don't have to necessarily use a drawing tablet pen to do this. That's what I'm gonna do for now. So you click once, and basically you leave a little dot there where you left your cursor. When you move your mouse or your tablet pen again, you're going to be choosing the location for the second point, or the other end of the diameter of the ellipse that you're wanting to create a stencil for, essentially. And the third dot is used to determine how wide or narrow the ellipse is going to be. So you can keep moving this dot however far you want, or however close you want. Now determine the thickness or thinness of the ellipse. Once you're done doing that, a little box will appear. This icon right here with the arrows pointing in 4 different directions, that allows you to actually move the assistant, or the ellipse rather, that you just made. Be careful not to click again by mistake. Just click, because otherwise you'll keep making a bunch of these. This icon right here, eyeball icon, basically makes, if you, okay, let me go back. So if you have more than one assistant tool, not just ellipses, but if you have more than one assistant tool, regardless of what type it is, this eyeball icon determines which one you use, and you can have more than one on at a time and use several of them at once. Now it's going to be difficult to do that, so to keep track of which one you're using, typically you're going to want to turn the ones you're not using currently off by making sure that the eyeball icon is off, and the ones that you want to use, you want to leave it on. If I want to use this assistant tool right here, I turn this off and turn this one back on. Now I can start using it. And believe me, you're going to have to get into the habit of micromanaging which ones are on and off if you're going to be using multiple assistants in a single composition, or in a single project. So this lock icon basically locks in exactly the location in which the assistant tool is, as well as it basically prevents it from moving around. So you can move these arrows now, but it's not going to move this assistant tool. I unlock it, and now I can move it around like this. Okay. This trash can icon basically deletes the assistant tool. Careful not to click on that if you really don't want to, or don't want to delete it. And this icon right here, this 9 or 3x3 grid, you click on this and it moves this toolbar right here, or the assistant tool, around. It doesn't move the assistant tool itself, or in this case this ellipse. So in Krita 5.0, I believe, or 5.1, this toolbar for the assistant tools was added into the software, and I'm glad for it, especially for this feature right here, the ability to move the toolbar, because now I can actually move this out of the way when I'm trying to change the parameters of the ellipse tool, or any other kind of tool for that matter. Let me explain why, or why it used to be a problem before we had this feature. So if I'm making an assistant like this, the toolbar in the past in Krita 4 would always spawn right on top of the tool that I just made, and unfortunately there was no way to move this toolbar out of the way. So if I had more than 2 or 3 assistants at a time right on top of each other, then these toolbars, as well as the different dots for the tool itself, would stack on top of each other like this, overlap more realistically like this, and therefore it'd be difficult to click between each of these toolbars, as well as moving these dimensions around for the assistant. Okay, so I guess I should do a little review. Basically, for now, we're just using the ellipse tool, the basic ellipse tool. So you click on this icon here, this little circle with 4 arrows pointing towards it. You can also hover over and it'll say assistant tool. For me, the default shortcut key to switch to the assistant tool is pressing the A key. You go over to the tool options docker, and in this category you can select ellipse, and once you're done doing that, go to the canvas, anywhere on the canvas, click once to put one end of the diameter of the circle, click a second time to put the other end of the diameter, and then the third click will determine how wide or narrow the ellipse is going to be. This is the toolbar for each respective assistant. And no, as far as I know, there's no way to label which one is which. So it can get pretty hectic, especially for me. If I have more than, say, 5 assistants at a time, then I have a hard time tracking which toolbar goes with which assistant. Or which assistant. This icon with the 4 arrows pointing around each other, that you click and drag this icon and it moves the assistant in any direction you want it to. The eyeball determines whether or not the assistant gets to be used or gets turned off without deleting the assistant. The lock itself keeps the assistant from moving around, but you can still turn it on and off. Trash can, of course, deletes it. Let me unlock that. There we go. Deletes it, and then the 3x3 grid moves the toolbar around. Okay. So now that we've got all that out of the way, now let's explain exactly why you would want to use these assistants. So for example, if I want to use sorry, I'm trying to grab red and black. There we go. So for example, if I want to draw an oval shape like this at a strange angle, hold on. There we go. At a strange angle like this, like a diagonally pointing oval, right? And I want to draw it somewhere over here. If I want to make sure that I can draw this oval without having to use so many different strokes, or if I'm not confident in my line work, then I can make a clean ellipse, oval, circle, whatever shape by just using this tool. If you want a comparison or an example of what this would be like using actual physical pencil and paper, traditional artwork tools, it'd be like using a stencil, right? Draw a perfect circle or ovals or whatever other shapes, right? So some sort of plastic or paper stencil that's got the shape cut out, and then all you gotta do is just use your pencil or pen to draw it around, draw the shape. Okay, so now how do you actually use this thing when you're using your brush? Now your brush, it does not matter which brush you use. You can use any kind of brush you want. Here are my brushes that I typically use. But I'm just going to select the most basic one I use for inking. This one right here. It's even got the word basic in it in the title. Oh, it's not appearing. Alright, so after you get done doing that, selecting your brush, go over to tool options again, and snap to assistant is the box that you want to check if you want to use the assistants that you just made. So click on this. The magnetism determines how closely the cursor itself of the brush, right, follows the stencil or the assistant that you just made. So since I got it cranked up to maximum, anywhere that I click will follow the circumference of the ellipse. So for example, if I click all the way over here, that is pretty much the closest proximity of where I put the cursor on the canvas, right here on the assistant itself. So if I click over here, now I made a dot over there. And if I just simply want to draw the ellipse, I click and drag with the mouse anyways. And there we go. I just follow the exact shape of this oval using the assistant tool and the this box right here. Now let's talk about some other applications of this. So if I have a pressure sensitive brush like the one I'm using right now, and the pressure sensitivity determines the size of the brush like this, right? If I tap really lightly, there's a thin line. If I press down hard, there's a thick line. Then I can also apply that parameter to the assistant that I just made. So let's check snap to assistants again. And now if I want to make this right side of the oval thin and make this left side of the oval thick, tap lightly on the right side, press harder the closer I get to the left side, and then if I want to, I can just let go here, start on the right side again, whoops, and then work my way on around the other way. So I went counterclockwise and now I'm going clockwise. Pressing lightly. Then as I get closer to the left side, I press down harder. And there we go. Now, if I go to the assistant tool and turn off the assistant tool, I can see the oval that I just drew using an assistant. And now one side, the left side of this oval is thick. The other side, right side, is thin. So that's just one application of the assistant tool. Now you might be wondering, why do all this when there is a ellipse tool right here already in the toolbar by default? Well, here's the problem with this ellipse tool. You can only draw ovals in either a vertical fashion like this or a horizontal fashion like this. Basically only on two axes. You cannot draw it diagonally. Even if you're clicking and dragging diagonally, left, right, up, down, it does not matter. So you can only draw ovals in two different directions. And on top of that, you can't actually modify the shape that you just drew afterwards. So if I want to make one half of this ellipse, say this right half of this vertical ellipse, thinner than the left side, I can't do that unless I go use the eraser tool and then manually erase all this to make it thin. And that's tedious and tiresome and whatnot. So it's just easier just to use the assistant tool, draw an ellipse, and let's make it a little bit bigger. Whoops. You gotta watch where you click. Make it thicker like this. Use the same brush, but now, whoops. Is it drawing? Oh. No, it's not. Where am I going wrong? Oh, I got the eraser on. My bad. And then now I circumvent that issue. And there we go. So with the ellipse tool over here, it only draws in two different directions, vertically or horizontally. That's it. There's no way you can make an angled ellipse at all. Oh, an angled oval pointing diagonally. And on top of that, you can't change the dimensions and parameters of the oval or circle that you drew with the ellipse tool after you get done drawing it or get done using it. You can't make this any thinner, you can't make this any thicker, you can't, you know, modify this in any way. So okay, I was about to say, why isn't it reset? Okay. So that's just the basics of the ellipse tool and the features of the assistant tools in general. Okay, so I guess I should talk about some of these other ones as well that I don't normally mess with or change. So yes, you can actually change the color of the assistant outlines. So I can make this red if I wanted to, but I normally just leave it on its default color. I don't even remember what the default color was. Let's just do some weird gray. There we go. You can also change its opacity as well, but I don't know why you would do that. Either, for me anyways, either I leave the assistant on so I can actually see where it is at all times, or if I'm not using it currently, or I'm not using it, I'm not going to use it for a while, I just turn it off. And that's it. Either 100% opacity for me or 0%. But it's up to you on whether or not you want to make it transparent, slightly transparent, or whatnot. Custom color, I mean, again, you can mess with this however way you want to. I'm not gonna do it. Cancel. Okay, so if for some reason you can save these assistants if you want to as a set, that way you can use it as a template for the next project you're working on, but I never really have a need for that. I don't see why I would, unless of course you're working on some sort of symmetrical composition or something like that. But even then though, you can only use, or you really should use one assistant tool at a time. Anyways, let's move on. So that's the basic ellipse tool. Now let's move on to the concentric ellipse tool. So what is the difference between the concentric ellipse tool and the ellipse tool? So the concentric ellipse tool basically functions very similarly to the basic ellipse tool, but let me explain the difference. So the concentric ellipse tool, once you get done making it and you go to use your brush, notice that there's a second ellipse that moves, that gets bigger or smaller depending on where your brush cursor is on the composition. So the further away I move the cursor from the assistant tool that I just made, or the ellipse that I just made, the assistant tool, the bigger this imaginary ellipse becomes. And the closer I move the cursor within or just outside of the tool, assistant tool, the smaller it gets. So you can probably guess what this is used for. Basically, you can make one assistant and be able to make several sizes, different sizes of that ellipse shape. And this is very useful if you're trying to draw patterns or specific forms within forms in certain objects, body parts, so on. So let's use this as an example. So let me edit this real quick. Say I want to draw an eyeball. Okay. Here's how I would do it. And let me use a different color. Hold on. Okay. So if I want to draw an eyeball, I'm gonna draw it, the outside shape of it, right? The outline of the eyeball, pretty big compared to the assistant that I just made, right? Next, I'm gonna draw the iris. So the iris is gonna be smaller, of course, than the shape of the eyeball itself, but it's not going to be smaller than the assistant I'm going to make that I just made. All right, it's not going to be smaller than this circle that I just made with the assistant. Now I'm going to draw one more circle that's smaller than the iris that I just made. There we go. And there's the pupil. So, eyeball, iris, pupil. Now let's fill it in. So let me turn this assistant off. Let me use the fill tool. Let me switch back to black. Boom, there's my pupil. Now, if I want to make the iris a certain color, let's say whatever orange, yellowish color this is. There we go. And then now I'm going to draw some blood vessels on the outer edge, the inner edge, or on the rim of the eyeball. That one's pretty bad. Okay, and then let's just draw some of the lines that you would see within the iris. I think they're called the photoreceptors or something. Either these are the photoreceptors or maybe there's some other word for it. And I'm not going to bother using an assistant tool to draw these straight lines, because that honestly doesn't matter. It's just an example. Okay, there we go. There's my eyeball. So instead of making 3 separate ellipses for these 3 different sizes of the circle, right, of the circle that I wanted to draw. So instead of doing this, let me demonstrate it rather than just talk about it. So instead of doing this, go all the way over here. So there's 1. There's 2. And here's 3. Instead of doing this and having to micromanage which ones that I use, right? You can see there are 3 different toolbars, and then having to switch between these 3 just to draw the same eyeball. I just use one assistant instead over here. And I'm able to draw 3 different sizes of the same circle. So it's way less work, way less micromanaging, and pretty much you get consistent results because unfortunately it's not very likely, at least for me anyways, for me to draw the same shape exactly with the same proportions or same scale anyways, just, you know, bigger or smaller. That's not very likely to happen. That's like drawing a perfect circle without any stencils or anything like that, like this, 5 times in a row consistently. Like, you can see that it's very difficult to do that, and it's not going to be any different from trying to make 3 different assistants just to do one job. So okay, so we're done with the basic ellipse, and I demonstrated the so we got done with the basic ellipse. I got done demonstrating the concentric ellipse. There's one more ellipse tool, and that is the perspective ellipse. Now this one's pretty cool. I don't remember if this was in the earlier versions of Krita. Maybe it was, I'm not sure, but here's what it does. So basically, the perspective ellipse tool requires you to draw 4 points instead of 3. And on top of that, you'll be drawing a square or rectangle grid instead of a actual oval or circle. So let me demonstrate it. Here's my first point, I'm putting it over here. Here's my second point, I'm putting it over here. Now, when I'm trying to put my third point, notice that it's a triangle now. Oops. It's a triangle right now. And that's because basically I'm drawing a grid, right, of where the ellipse is supposed to adhere to or fit within. And there's my fourth point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and the ellipse that gets drawn within these 4 points will be dependent on how far apart these points are. So if I want to make this ellipse a little bit narrower on this right side, then all I gotta do is just move this corner up and away from these 2 other points on the other side, on the left side. If I want to make this ellipse wider, on the horizontal axis, all I gotta do is just raise 2 of these points up, either the ones on the top or the ones on the bottom. And as you can see, this ellipse, whether it be a circle or an oval shape, will always fit within these 4 lines connecting to these 4 points. Now, when I found out how to use this properly by experimentation with my own projects, I thought this was cool because it solved one of the problems that I had with one of my compositions that I was working on at the time. That is, how do I draw an ellipse that's angled weirdly, or rather is dependent on another shape? So, for example, if I just leave these 4 points the way they are right now, this is not a square, this is not a rectangle, this is some weird trapezoid, right? Some sort of weird polygon I can't define with a simple label. But yeah, I want to draw a circle within this shape. Well, Krita actually helps me draw an ellipse that would fit within this shape that I just made with these 4 points. And I can modify this whenever I want to. So if I want to make some sort of weird upside down rhombus, this is what the ellipse looks like now. And then just like with all the other ellipse tools, after I choose my brush, right, whichever brush I want, let's try this one. Let's also go back to black. Go into the tool options of the brush tool. Turn on Synaptic Assistance. And then now I can use this weird ellipse that I just made. And this is a weird airbrush that I don't use a lot, so that's why the line looks like that. Let's try using it. Let's try this one. This is the brush that I use to draw a leaf on trees and other vegetation. So go to Assistant tool, turn this off, and bada bing, bada boom, there's my oval that would fit within this weird rhombus shape. And why is this useful? Well, if I had a shape like the one that I made with the Assistant tool within the composition, bing bada boom, that's how I would accurately do it. Draw an ellipse anyways within that shape. Actually, let me do another example of that. So if for whatever reason I decide to do something ridiculous like this shape in a composition, I don't know, maybe I'm drawing some weird like alien weapon or something, and I wanted to draw a circle or oval within the shape that would fit and stretch within the shape. I go to Assistant tool, Perspective Ellipse, put my first point here on this corner, second point on this corner here, third point on this corner here, and fourth point on this corner here. And there we have it. That's what the ellipse would look like if it was stretched around that way. All right, 1 second. Alright, sorry about all that. I had a playlist on earlier and forgot to exit out the tab. But yeah, basically that's how I'd make the ellipse within this weird shape. And now, after I get done making that ellipse, I go to the, hold on. Yep. Go to my brush tool over here. Go to tool options, snap to assistance, and then now I'll choose other type of brush. Let's do this one. Actually, no, let's not do that one. It's too big. Let's do this one. Okay, and then now I can draw the ellipse that would fit within the shape. Of course, this brush is a little too big, so let me try making it smaller. There we go. Actually, let's not make it black. Let's make it some other color. Do this one. Cool. And there we have it. All right, so That's what the ellipse or the oval would look like if it were to fit within this weird shape, this trapezoid shape. All right. So those are the 3 ellipse tools within that you can make with these assistants. Now let's move on to some of the other assistants that you can use. Let me make this into a separate, one combined layer. There we go. Like a new layer. Turn this off. Okay. And let's just delete these since I'm not going to need them anymore. Alright, so let's go through some of these other assistance tools. Let's start with parallel ruler, because that's one that I use a lot. So what does parallel ruler do? Basically, if you've ever used a ruler, a wooden or plastic ruler within your math or art classes back in grade school, draw a straight line. That's what this is essentially made for. So once you select parallel ruler and the drop down menu, click anywhere in the composition. One time you make your first point. The second time you click is where you put the other end of the ruler, and now determine the direction of your lines that you'll make. Now, and of course you can edit this ruler however way you want to. You can pick this second point or this first point and drag and move it around, change direction. Now, this tool, parallel ruler, does not determine how long or short your lines are. It only determines the direction in which your lines are pointing. That's it. So after I get done making this assistant, what I'm going to do next is go to brush and make sure snap assistance is on. Let me make this a little bit bigger, brush size anyways, so you can actually see it. And now you can see that there's a second line parallel to the one of the assistant that I just made, and it's going to follow the cursor that of my brush. So now any line that I draw will be parallel to the assistant that I just made. So I could draw one there, I could draw one here, I draw one here, I draw one here, I draw one here, and so on and so forth. And it's always going to be parallel to the assistant that I just made with the parallel ruler assistant tool. Yep. So again, it does not determine how long or short the lines are. So I can make them short, I can make them long, I can make them on this side of the assistant tool, I can make them all the way over here on this side of the assistant tool. It honestly does not matter. But basically, you can make parallel lines, and however many you want to anyways, even on top of the assistant tool, like this. Now, this is pretty useful if you want to apply hatching or cross hatching to render forms and add value to your projects. So I could literally just do this. Just keep going. And there we go. Whoops. Well, that's kind of a bad example. Let me see if I can do a better one. Basically what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to show consistent application of value through just hatching like this. So evenly spaced lines out. Add line going both of them. Okay. Then towards the end, add some more lines, make it darker. So you're starting to get the point. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. So you can basically make hatching a little bit easier using the parallel ruler. And again, you can modify the ruler point in any direction that you want. So now I can do this and hatch in this direction, or I can apply cross hatching like this. Anyways, you're starting to get the point. Okay, so that's basically a good demonstration of what the parallel ruler does. It doesn't really do anything more than that. So let's just move on. There's another type of ruler called the infinite ruler, and essentially it works differently from the parallel ruler in that it allows you to draw lines that follow the direction of the assistant that you just made, but it also allows you to draw lines perpendicular to the assistant that you just made. So let me demonstrate that real quick. So I can draw a line following this assistant, or I can draw lines that are perpendicular to it. And just like with parallel ruler, I can use this to apply hatching. And keep in mind too that you can do it in both directions, or both sides rather, of the ruler that you just made. I haven't really found any real applications for this, any practical ones anyways, but nonetheless though, if you're wanting to draw stitches on fabric or some other kind of pattern like that, then this is a good tool for this, or for that purpose. But otherwise though, I haven't really been using this one too much. I did try to use it for my Ninja Gaiden compositions, but it's just not very practical to only hatch like this, because you would still have to move the ruler around to do cross hatching if that's what you want to do. If you want to do just regular hatching, this isn't really a good way to do it, because you can't move past the ruler itself, or the assistant. So if I start over here, you can see that it stops right where the assistant is, over here. If I go over here and do the same thing, it stops again. And if I just want to draw a straight line following the assistant tool, I mean, it does that, but if I want to draw a line parallel to the assistant tool, I mean to the assistant, then I can't do that. I'd have to use a parallel ruler. So there's the infinite ruler. Again, I don't really have too many needs for it, for this assistant anyways, so therefore I don't personally use it very much. Okay. You can also change how many subdivisions and minor divisions there are, so you can, that pretty much determines how many lines that you draw, like this, between each other. It's up to you. Let me zoom in real quick. It's kind of hard to see it. So subdivisions determines the spacing between the increments, and the minor subdivisions determine the increments within those increments. You also check this fixed length of these divisions, and so on and so forth. But again, though, I personally don't use this tool, so let's just move on. The ruler, I believe, works the same way. Let me just demonstrate real quick. Again, I don't personally use this one either. Except that it doesn't work. It doesn't allow you to draw perpendicular lines to the assistant itself. So this assistant is going in this direction, but if I want to draw lines perpendicular to it, I can't do that. And it's not infinite either, meaning that the length of the assistant, this from here to here, that actually determines how long the line can be when I'm trying to draw it. So if I want to draw a longer one that goes all the way over here, start there, and as you can see, I'm not able to move past this point. Same with this end over here. So pretty cool if you want to draw specific line lengths, but if you want to again do hatching with this assistant, then that's going to be very difficult, if not outright possible. Now, you can technically make it work if you want to move the assistant around like this, but then that's a lot more work and time spent just working with a tool that doesn't perform the same function as another tool. It's like, why bother doing that when you can just use the parallel ruler and then be done with it? Okay. So up to you. And I might change the background music. I don't like listening to than a half an hour. I used to tolerate that a lot more when I was younger, but not anymore. Bothered by this. Okay. So let's see, how many assistants are there? 1, 2, 5. So there are 11 different types of assistants, and we've gone through 6 of them. So we're about halfway done. So let's talk about the rest. Now, in my lesson plan, I'd originally just want to do only the concentric and ellipse tools. I mean, the concentric ellipse and the regular ellipse tools. But for the most part, though, I feel like it'd be better for me to just cover all of them, because more or less though, it pretty much shows which ones are more relevant towards practical applications than others. That's not to say that the types of assistants that I don't personally use very much or at all are useless. That's not to say that. It just means that I normally don't use one tool over the other because the other tool does the function that I want it to, or serves its purpose better than the other tools. So for example, if I want to make hatching lines, I'm going to use the parallel ruler. If I want to make several circles within the same parameters, right, the same diameter, same radius, circumference and all that, just on a bigger or smaller scale, then I'm going to use the concentric ellipse tool. But the other ones have their purpose as well. Let's talk about the vanishing point. Vanishing point tool. Let's turn these off. Okay. Actually, let's just erase them. Delete them. Okay, so. Hold on. Try and change the color right on my brush. So. The vanishing point tool essentially allows the user to make 1 point perspective compositions. Okay. It just allows you to use 1 point perspective in your work. That's it. Now, that is quite a lot more than you would think, but there are separate parameters that you got to take into account. For one, I'm pretty sure you can, hold on, sorry, change the direction in which, oh no, I'm sorry, that's the 2 point perspective, never mind. So you can change the location in which the vanishing point is placed. So say for example, I want the focus of the composition to be in this bottom left corner, then I could just move the vanishing point all the way down here. And there we go. So go back to brush, and there we have it. All the lines are going to be facing and pointing towards the bottom left corner over here. All right, now the density parameter over here just determines how many lines incrementally, right, that you can draw that points towards the vanishing point or moves towards the vanishing point. So if I want to move the vanishing point over here and draw a lot of lines coming from the vanishing point, this is how we would do it. Drop the density down even further, use my brush tool, and then just go ham. Okay. Okay, so and you can still draw the same number of lines. It's just that the assistant itself is not going to display all those directions in which you can make them. But yeah, the vanishing point ruler is, assistant is pretty simple, really. Just allows you to do 1 point perspective. One thing to keep in mind is that when you're using this for 1 point perspective, or making 1 point perspective compositions or constructions, Excuse me. If you leave the snap to assistance box on, it won't allow you to draw vertical or horizontal lines. So why is that a problem? Say, for example, if you didn't draw the vertical or horizontal lines of a box, and yet you want to connect, whoops, hold on. Connect the lines towards the vanishing point, the corners to the vanishing point like this. Say, for example, you want to do this, but you want to leave the assistant tool on. Well, you can't really draw vertical, horizontal lines because of that, right? Because of this. So you'd have to turn this off and then draw your vertical, horizontal lines. You can also just use the line tool as well. And line tool can use the assistants as well. But I normally leave that off, because it's kind of redundant to use line tool for that when I could just use the brush instead. I'm using the line tool to connect these two diagonal lines, make the other end of this box. For some reason the line's not. There we go. But as I was saying, if I started off with the diagonal lines, I want to draw the box somewhere down here, bottom right corner of this canvas. This is what would happen. So here's one, here's another one. Oops. Actually, hold on. One, here's one. And here's one more. Now, if I'm trying to connect these three lines using vertical and horizontal lines, I can't do that, because they're all lines I'm trying to, that I'm going to be using. Sorry, making will point towards this vanishing point. So turn snap to assistance off. There we go. Now I can draw my horizontal lines and vertical lines. And of course, as I said, you can use the line tool to make this easier. Cool. Alright, so that's vanishing point in a nutshell. It's just one point perspective drawing. Move on to 2-point perspective. And that's at the very top of the drop-down menu. So you'll be selecting 2 different points to determine where the vanishing points are for 2-point perspective assistance. So I want to put one here, and then I'll put this other one here. And now, as you can see, it is creating a grid both on the above and below the horizon line, connecting the 2 points. And there we have it. So that's what the lines would look like coming from both these points and how they would intersect. Now, what's cool about the 2-point perspective assistant tool is that it allows the user to draw vertical lines or lines perpendicular to the horizon line, right, as well as the lines, whoops, hold on, let's use a different brush, go back to this one. So here's my perpendicular lines towards the horizon line. If this was completely horizontal, right, as far as the actually, let me just show it. Oh, so if I wanted to just make a regular perspective drawing, 2-point perspective drawing like this. Horizon line is horizontal. And this is what it would look like. Now I can draw vertical lines with the assistant on. Whereas with vanishing point, the vanishing point assistance, I can't do that with 1-point perspective. But I can with 2-point. Okay. Yeah. So let's go back and try to connect these perspective lines. I mean perpendicular lines. So I want to draw the corner of a building. That's how I would do it. Somewhere over here. There. Over here. Oops. It's kind of tricky because since Krita's having to make the cursor of the brush snap to 3 different directions perpendicular towards the horizon line, right? And one direction pointing towards one of the vanishing points and another direction towards the other vanishing point, right? Then you're gonna kind of struggle a bit anyways. It's gonna be kind of annoying to draw lines using this tool. And my best advice would be to lower the magnetism just a bit. It does help slightly. You can see. Let's set up a bit. Didn't make that line. Oh. Okay. And there we have it. There's my building right there. Let's draw a door on it. And there's my door. Draw a window as well. Anyways, you get the point. So the 2-point perspective tool basically allows you to do 2-point perspective compositions and constructions. I don't think there are any parameters per se that you can manipulate with 2-point perspective. You can change the increments at which the assistant can show you the number of lines intersecting with each other, but I mean, that's not really all that helpful in my opinion, because that doesn't determine which directions that the lines are going to go anyways, that you're going to draw. So I just leave it on its default value. All right, so done with 2-point perspective. We're nearly done with all the different assistant tools. Let's talk about spline, because this is a one that I didn't really use for the last, what, 3 years I've been using Krita. I've only been using it recently for like the last 3 or 4 weeks, because for the most part I finally found a use for it. So the spline tool basically, actually spline tool basically allows you to make Bezier curve like lines, except that you can actually take the Bezier curve that you make and use it as a stencil. So you can make multiple copies of that same Bezier curve. So Krita already has a Bezier curve line tool. I believe it's this one right here. So this is what it does. That's my first point, my second point, third point. Oh, hold on. Did I select the right one? Oh, shift mouse click. There we go. So basically, that's what the Bezier curve does. It allows you to modify and draw curved lines pretty cleanly, or in a clean like fashion. But as you can see, there's a problem with this tool, or not a problem, but there's a drawback to this tool, and that is you can only draw the line that you want to make once, right? That curved line once. So say for example, if I want to draw this line more than this one instance after I hit enter, I can't do that, right? Unless I just make a copy of this layer and then keep pasting it over and over and over again. So what would I do instead? I can go to the assistant tool, go down to the drop down box, pick spline, and essentially make my own Bezier curve stencil, right? Like this, that I can just copy over and over and over again. Oops, hold on. Got to change the magnetism back max. And that's my Bezier curve. Pretty clean. So if I want to make this Bezier curve again and some other part of the canvas, like this corner, for example, bottom right corner, I could just move the assistant over here, go back to brush, and then draw it again. Exact same way. And now I have two of them. Granted, one of them is not as thick as the other, but that's my fault. And then you can just keep doing this over and over and over again. And what's cool about this too is that you can modify the stencil. Okay, I want it to look like this now. And then do some sort of S shape. This. Over here in between these two lines. And there it is. Okay, so Spline 2 just basically allows you to draw curved lines, S shapes, C shapes, you know, squiggly spiral lines, however way you want to design it. And then you can use that same shape and move it around, and you could make hatching using this, which is what I did with my Ninja Gaiden compositions. Assuming that it's not going to cheat by jumping around. There we go. There's my second one. Let's draw, make another one behind it. So here's my third one. Okay, so as you can see, pretty useful if you want to make hatching with curved lines, S shapes, C shapes, I don't know, Q shapes, whatever shape you want, or lines rather. Different types of curved and wavy lines. Now, unlike the Bezier curve, where you can put however many points you want, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it just goes on, and then once you hit enter, it does all those points for you. Unlike the Bezier curve, the spline tool can't really do that. It only does 2 points. 1, 2, and then that's it. So there is a limit to what the spline tool can do, but nonetheless though, it's still handy to use it. All right, so that's the spline tool, and there's only one more assistant that I've yet to use, or yet to demonstrate. Let's go to a new layer, these, and that is the fisheye point. This one I don't really use at all, and I still haven't really found a particular use for it. So it's just like the other ellipse tools, but it also functions as an infinite ruler tool as well. So let me explain. So you can make an ellipse like you normally do with the other ones, either long or short. Now these perpendicular lines, what they do is they allow the user, let's make this a little smaller. They allow the user to essentially make multiple ellipses, right, that the assistant shows, but in different directions. I mean, along a set direction. So here's my first ellipse. I'm going to draw it over here. Next, I'm going to draw another ellipse over here. And I can make it however wide or narrow I want to for this one. And if I want to, I can make this one extremely wide. Off, and there we go. I guess if you want to draw like snowmen or some other form using 3 ellipses at a time, then this is what you would, this is the tool that you would use that for. But otherwise though, I personally don't. I've not figured out a real, not real, but practical application for this tool. I'll have to look at the Krita documentation to see exactly what it was made for, because I can't think of the purpose for it, to be honest. But nonetheless, I just wanted to show what it's capable of doing, because maybe someone can better use this tool than I can. All right, so we've gone over the basic ellipse tool, the concentric ellipse tool, the perspective ellipse tool, the parallel ruler, the infinite ruler, the basic ruler, vanishing point assistant, the 2-point perspective assistant, the spline tool, and lastly the fisheye point tool. So that's all of the different assistants that you can use in Krita. Can you use more than one type at a time? Yes, you can. So let me demonstrate that real quick. So for example, I don't know why I did that. Same layer. So if I want to draw an ellipse or a perfect circle, let's say, I want to draw same proportions of a circle 4 different times. So let's say that's my circle. Let's make there we go. There's 1, 2, 3, and 2 more. It's really small. There's 4. Okay. So that's one tool. I'm gonna turn this one off. And now I'm gonna go to the drop-down menu, right, in tool options. And I want to draw a bunch of lines going from the center of all those circles. So I'm gonna pick vanishing point. I'm gonna put the vanishing point right in the center of all these circles. Go to brush. And then now I'm gonna draw lines going from the center and then outward, and I'm gonna do so in between these circles. Okay. So that's 2 assistants that I just used. Now, if I want to, oops, my bad. Keep excellent. If I want to make some curved lines going into and out of these circles. Just gonna do this here, here. Now let's move them all the way over here. So some S shapes like this. Again, be careful where you click, because sometimes it can be really annoying trying to click on the points. Move this up a bit. Go. There's one S shape. Something else too is that you don't necessarily have to follow these assistants all the way through. You can pick up and put down your tablet pen whenever and wherever you want to. So if I don't want to draw a line going through circles, but I want to draw a line going from this point, right, this end of the spline, to this outer circle, start here, move my cursor all the way until I touch that outer circle, pick up my tablet pen, and then move it all the way over to this end, other end of the spline tool. Then do the same thing. Stop there at the circle. Let me turn the spline tool off. And lo and behold, there's my S-shaped curve without it going through the circles. And thus save me the work of having to erase that or moving that inner part of the S going through the circles later. It just saves me time and effort. Okay, so that's 3 assistants so far. Let's use one more. Let's use the parallel ruler. Let's say I want to do this, make it go in this direction. Okay, and then now I'm just drawing a bunch of lines in this direction. And I don't necessarily want to go through the circle. And why am I doing this? Well, it gives the illusion of motion when I do this. It makes it look like this circular thing, I'm not really sure what to call it, the abstract, is moving in this down right, bottom right direction. There we go. As you can see, it looks like it's moving in this direction. Okay, so that's 4 different assistant tools being used in the same composition, and I made some strange abstract design using all 4 of those assistants. So this is just an example of what you could do with this. Now, what are the practical applications for this, for these assistant tools? Well, you can draw backgrounds, realistic urban or fantasy backgrounds using cube point or 1-point perspective tools. You can also draw, as I've already shown earlier, different body parts, like, you know, an eyeball, for example, with the concentric ellipse tools and perspective ellipse tools. The perspective ellipse tools are good for drawing decals on objects or vehicles, things of that nature. You can also draw just circular objects in general that are being stretched or confined in small spaces, like over here. Let's see. So the parallel ruler is really useful for drawing hatching or cross hatching. It's also used for drawing grids as well, if you want to do that. Let's see. Here's 1-point perspective. Again, you could draw boxes, doors, windows, buildings, houses, what have you. 2-point perspective, again, like 1-point perspective, you can draw different objects, geometric objects, like one over here, this building. I don't remember what this layer was for. Okay, I'm just gonna delete that because I'm not seeing it. The spline tool is useful for drawing S-shaped lines, C-shaped lines, curved lines that you normally would struggle to draw pretty well. I mean, clean like without it looking wiggly. Whoops. Basically, if you're not very confident in your line work and your lines look something like this, when you're just trying to draw an S-shape line or a C shape line, if it looks more like a 3 like that when you're trying to draw a C shape line, or if you're trying to draw an S or some other kind of like line work like this and it just doesn't look all that clean, like over here, just take the spline tool and just make your life a little bit easier. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't learn how to improve your line work and your control over your hand as far as drawing cleaner lines. But at least, if nothing else, it makes it easier to do line work when you're basically don't have the luxury of practicing over and over and over again just to do something like this. Dude, I'm trying to draw the same curve line that I just made, and as you can see, I can get close, but it's still difficult to do that without it looking weird. See, that's the closest I'm probably gonna get. But again, the spline tool just makes it easier to do that. Okay. And then, as I said, you can combine these different assistant tools so that you can create different kinds of compositions, one's in 1-point or 2-point perspective, along with hatching on forms or buildings or objects and whatnot, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think that's about it. And I'm only demonstrating the possibilities with these assistants because someone could easily find, let me rephrase that. Someone can use these assistant tools to make their compositions and projects easier. Others will use them to make thumbnail sketches much more quickly to get an idea of what artwork they have in their minds, right, that they're thinking of, and they can easily show it to someone else without having to bother going through the tedious task of doing a bunch of line work and having to spend a lot of attempts, or making a bunch of attempts doing the strokes correctly. What else? This is also useful. Assistants are also useful for construction of anatomy, because say if you want to draw your characters or portraits in perspective, then you would want to first start off with 1-point perspective or 2-point perspective. So let's try 1 point just to make it easy. So for example, if I want to draw the body of a person and the construction lines are pointing towards this bottom left corner, then this is how I would do it. Hold on, I forgot. Let's draw so this is basically torso, abstract character, okay. And that's basically how much depth there is pointing towards the vanishing point, my bad. Here. Come on. I might just switch over to my mouse because doing completely vertical and horizontal lines like that is harder for me to do on my tablet pen for some reason. So there's the torso. And now if I want to draw the chest and the hips and all that, or no, let's just start with the chest and the ribs. So there's my construction of the torso. Come on. Come on. Assuming I don't take forever to do this. Close enough. Yeah. other half of rib cage. So this is basically the rib cage of the torso of the character or humanoid character that I'm constructing. Assuming I can do this in as few strokes as possible. Okay. There's the center line of the rib cage. Here are the ribs themselves. And here's the back of the rib cage. Because the rib cage is three-dimensional, of course. Spine be here. And then just do the same thing for the waist up here, the head, the skull up here, and so on and so forth. Do the clavicle, shoulders here. There you have it. Okay, so there's the arms, clavicle, or the collarbone, my bad. Rib cage, bottom of the spine, do the upper part of the spine, draw the skull up here, blah blah blah. So many different applications of these assistants and assistant tools in general. Up to you on what you want to use them for. This is not really a tutorial on fundamentals of, you know, drawing anatomy and all that, hatching and so on. This is more so just a showcase of what this feature within Krita can do for you, and why I personally use them for. So let me bring up some personal examples of projects that I've made where I've been using these. Assuming that I can't. Oh, hold on, I forgot. I gotta. So let's look at. Okay. Let's hide that real quick. There we go. So for the hatching on this ninja right here, and on the cliff sides over here, I would either use the parallel ruler, like over here, or in this case, in the shins, or of the boots anyways, of the ninja. We'll use the parallel ruler to draw, make these hatching lines, or I would use the spline tool and make these curved hatching lines over here, and on the ninja's other limbs and body parts, or main clothing. Essentially what I would do is I would make a spline assistant, and this is pretty much how many assistant tools that I use just for this composition alone. I know it's a lot, but for me I wouldn't say it's necessary, but it definitely does help keep everything clean. And I pretty much prioritize that over organization, really. Or simplicity, for that matter. So here's me making let me make a separate layer. Go. So what I would do is, if say I want to do the hatching for this cliff side over here, then I would make the point on this edge of the cliffside, and then move the other point somewhere over here. And then make the line as curved as possible, following the contour of the cliffside. There we go. So after I get done drawing a line on the spline assistant, I would then move this up or down to follow the height of the cliffside, right, along this edge right here. And go up and down like this. And that's how I would get the hatching done on that. Let me turn the ground texture off. Not the ground texture, the rock texture. There we go. That way it's easier to see. So I move this up or down, draw a line, move it up again, draw another line, move it up again, draw another line, and so on and so forth. Again, because you can't really use the spline tool to draw the same curved lines parallel to each other. This is pretty much the only real way I can draw these hatching lines, right, curved hatching lines consistently, and that's to actually just move the spline tool itself. Making several instances of the same spline shape is not practical at all. It's just easier just to draw the line, go back to the assistant settings, move this up, draw another line, and so on and so forth. I did the same thing with the ninja himself, and I did the same thing as well for the ground and wherever else I put the hatching on. Okay, so let's delete that. Let's turn this back on. There we go. So that's one example. Let's open up another example. Something more recent. If I can find it. Maybe it's over here. Come on. Yeah, it is. I need to move this folder somewhere else. Okay, so this is a much better example of using multiple assistants. I mean, different types of assistants within the same project. So if we turn the color off for the background, and then again for the character right here. So basically, if I go to the assistant tool, this is how many assistants that I used to make this composition. So like I said earlier, there's no real limit to how many assistants you can use. And if it makes it easier for you to make your composition, go for it. I mean, there's no rules saying how many of them you can. Now this looks like a ridiculous amount, and I would totally agree, but I justify having this many because, one, let me show you. This right here, all the forms over here are completely geometric. Besides the few circles and ovals you see, the rest of this drawing is just nothing but straight lines, squares, parallelograms, triangles here and there. I mean, sorry, trapezoids down here. And let me go. So here's trapezoids over here. Here are a bunch of rectangular prisms over here, and just rectangles in general. Square that's in perspective up here on this plane of this head of this character. For the ellipse tools, I use them to make the hands of this character, as well as the ovals of the arm within the arms, acting as elbows. Circles right here were made using the perspective ellipse tool. Same with these. Circles over here. So here's a good example of using 2 or more assistants just to draw a form or shape. So this right here, one assistant was used, right, a regular basic ellipse, to draw this half of the circle right here. And then I use another assistant tool, if I can find it. There. Yeah, here it is. I use this perspective ellipse to draw the other half of this sphere, quote unquote sphere, underneath the head of this character, right? To pretty much try to get this spherical shape in perspective, to follow the perspective of the head, right? Because again, this whole drawing is in two-point perspective. And so far I did a pretty good job, but you can see that it took 2 assistants just to do that. And granted, no, if I had a better understanding of perspective in general, I wouldn't need these assistants in the first place. But for anyone that's just trying to learn how to draw and learning how to use perspective in general, this is pretty much a good example of using these assistant tools, more than one anyways, and more than one type, just to achieve a result that looks good, to be honest. Same thing over here with this orb. Let me get these out of the way. So this shoulder-like orb right here, where this end of the arms connect and this right arm connect, that was used. I just used the same method over here on this part of the character's body, so to speak. I did the same thing over here too with this mic-looking shape, microphone-looking shape. I also used, I believe, the concentric ellipse tool to get these curved lines as well. Yeah. No, never mind. I used a spline tool, and all I did was, I think I just used the same one. I just stretched it further to get it to be parallel. That's just a line tool to get the antenna there. Parallel ruler was used to get the lines in the arm over here, as well as the quote unquote fingers, right, in this direction. That's how that was done. Let's see what else. Oops, my bad. And then the rest of the forms in the background were made using the 2-point perspective tools. So yeah, I mean, you can play around with the assistant tools and you can get some really interesting compositions using them. Now, would I recommend using them all the time? That's up to you, to be honest. There's no real rule saying that you can't use these assistants. That's like saying that you can't use a ruler to draw straight lines in traditional art. I mean, you obviously can. And in some professions like graphic designers or architects, you almost have to use those kinds of tools to do that kind of work, because otherwise, if you draw lines like this, draw lines like this when you're just trying to draw a straight line going up and down vertically, and another person comes over to look at it, and if that was on the schematics or a blueprint of a building or some sort of design for a product, they're obviously not going to understand what they're looking at. So again, there's no reason not to use these assistant tools. Does it make you a better or worse artist? I mean, honestly, I don't really think it makes someone worse at drawing if they use these tools. I mean, if anything, it just makes it faster to achieve the same purpose. Yes, you can. Oh, let me make an example real quick. Say, for example, I want to make a 1-point perspective drawing. Traditionally, this is what you would do, right? If you weren't using any assistant tools at all. Black. So you would have to make a horizon line, right? Horizon line. Then you have to choose where the vanishing point is going to be. For example, let's say this is my vanishing point right here. Where the horizon line goes through the entire canvas. So there's my vanishing point. This is my horizon line. Now, if I want to draw a box down here, bottom left corner, for some reason I seem to like this corner a lot today. If I want to make a box down here, first I have to, let's make this look a little better. Draw a square or rectangle like this using vertical and horizontal lines. Then I would have to make the diagonal lines move all the way towards the vanishing point like this. Come on. And as you can see, this is taking a lot longer because I'm essentially trying to make straight lines going in a specific direction, going from one specific point, in which case it's this top right corner of this square, to touch this other point on the canvas, which is this vanishing point, and trying to make it look clean at the same time so that I don't have to waste more time trying to make it look good by cleaning it up or going over it again in a separate layer. I'm having to make multiple attempts, you know, unsuccessfully, trying to make it touch. Come on. Oh, I got pretty close that time. There we go. That's a 1. Let's do the other 2. And I don't have those fancy, I'm not using a fancy tablet where it's got a screen or something like that. I'm just using a Wacom Bamboo tablet, so pretty much I'm literally having to eyeball this as best as I can. And I could use like a stabilizer to make this a little bit easier, but even then though, it makes a line look cleaner, but it doesn't make it any it won't make connecting one point to the other any easier. I almost got it that time. And you can see how much time this is just wasting, right? There we go. And then one more. Okay, that's close enough. Boom. Vertical line up here. Horizontal line going through here. Boom. Come on. Okay. Horizontal line, vertical line. There's my box in 1-point perspective. And I did all of that, you know, just doing it freehand, right? Now let's go to another layer and let's use the assistant tools. So assistant tool, vanishing point, move the vanishing point about the same spot where I had it on the other layer, right? Let's just make sure. Okay, I had it over here. Okay. All right. Now, go to brush. Let's do the same thing again. Let's draw the square of the box. And again, I can use the line tools, but just for the sake of the example, I'm just going to do it this way. Go. Okay, now here's my square. Let's turn on snap to assistant. Boom. 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 Let's go back to turn that off. Boom. Hold on. Almost. There we go. Boom. And let me zoom in a bit because it's kind of hard to see. Almost. There we go. Okay, boom. There we go. So I literally made the same box within a fraction of the time that it took me with the other layer. And more or less it's about the same shape. Let me turn this red so it becomes a little bit easier to see. Oops, hold on. Go, and then let's turn this opacity down a bit. Oh, like that. Turn this off. All right, so I think I pretty much made my point that the assistants just make the process of drawing and painting faster. I wouldn't necessarily say it makes it easier. I mean, yes, technically it does, but as long as you understand how to apply the fundamentals of drawing and painting, as well as applying the elements of art and principles of design to your compositions and projects and whatnot, as long as you understand and apply that knowledge to your work, the tools that you use don't really matter that much. Now, there are exceptions, of course, don't get me wrong. We'll talk about that some other time, but for now, though, I mean, you know, there's nothing wrong with using these assistants at all. Again, if you were to do this in traditional art using physical tools and mediums, you would use rulers, protractors, sextants. You would use stencils. What else? Yes, you would. If you were to do perspective drawing, you would have to do the construction of the, vanishing point, the horizon line, all that. But again, though, you would use rulers for that. You would use protractors if you're trying to apply curved forms and shapes to those perspective drawings. You could even use graph paper to make grids. Honestly, so pretty much, it really does come down to you just using the tools to making the process faster and to some easier. I mean, if you really want to make this into a skill based thing, I mean, honestly, it just really doesn't matter as far as that goes, because again, it matters more about the knowledge or the information rather that you're trying to convey in it, and in the image that you're trying to make. So anyways, I think I've covered just about everything that I wanted to in this lesson. Let me take a look at my note. Again, I was only going to cover only like 2 of these assistant tools, but because I wanted to stream this live instead of just making a regular tutorial video, I decided to just go through all of them. Let's see. Yeah, I explained the toolbars for the assistants. I've explained what each assistant tool does, how I use them, at least briefly anyways. I'm not going to go into every single instance of when I use this and that tool. I could, but I'm not going to, because you could just watch my VODs for the other drawings that I've made using these same tools to get a better understanding of that. Let's see. I made an abstract design. I've also made concrete examples like a ball or a box or a building. And pretty much the only other things that I was going to recommend doing is making assignments, but that's not really a thing when it comes to video-based content. You don't have a content creator telling the viewer, hey, draw a bunch of boxes and then come back in the next video and, I don't know, somehow link me your work on Twitter or something. That's not really what people do. So I'm hoping that this helps someone out, at least gives them an understanding of how they can use Krita for at least these purposes that I've shown. So yeah, I've achieved my goal for this lesson. I think I've made everything clear, or as clear as I can anyways. I'll check back in the VOD and see what I can improve on. Again, this is the first time I'm teaching online in this format and this method. I do have teaching experience, but honestly, my experience as a teacher was pretty much broken up into 5% of that time actually teaching, and the other 95% of that experience of being a teacher, literally doing nothing. I mean, doing everything else but teaching. Classroom management, paperwork, after school events, morning duty, etc., etc. Being a teacher, for public schools especially, it's a harrowing experience. And on top of that, the actual teaching part of being a teacher makes up a very small amount of the time that you spend in that career. I'm hoping that I did a much better job teaching, at least with this first stream anyways, than I did throughout the entire time as a teacher. Because I tell you, man, it just sucks that you can have so many people, especially young people, literally keep you from just doing the very thing that you're hired to do. You know, all I wanted to do was just teach. That's it. I just wanted to show them how to do cool things with, you know, drawing, this and that, painting, sculpting, and so on. It's not that they didn't care, that didn't bother me. It's just the fact that they just wanted to nothing but fight each other, break stuff, make everyone else's jobs harder by making messes behind, so that and they knew this full well too, that the custodians or the teachers would have to clean up behind them, and that would end up wasting more time for the others, right, the other staff members, because now they're having to wait on, you know, someone else to finish cleaning up and drag out the lessons even more than good or rush them. Oh man, just being a teacher right now in a public school setting, it's booty. It really is. It sucks. Honestly, at least right now anyways, I would not recommend. I know I'm kind of making a side tangent about that. I mean, it has nothing to do with the lesson I'm doing now, but to bring it back though to what I was saying earlier, I'm hoping that this live stream, this first lesson I'm doing, accomplishes something, and I think I did. If nothing else, I've shown what you could with Krita as far as that. I'm hoping to make more of these. Again, I don't think I'll be doing tutorial style videos, because I mean, I started the script for that video I mentioned earlier that I wanted to make, but it just seemed way too robotic and nothing like what you would actually experience in an actual classroom setting, or even in art school if you were to take an drawing or painting major in college. So I wanted to keep this as close to the actual experience you can get in an official educational setting as possible. I hope that I've accomplished that, or at least, you know, if there's room for improvement, I hope that I can work on that. Sure. But anyways, that's about it for this lesson. I'll keep posting my work on my Twitter, showcasing the things that you can do with these tools and whatnot. And I'll be doing more lessons like this. I really do. Okay. The stream has been going on for about 2 hours now, so I don't want to take any more time than necessary. So that's gonna be it. I'll wrap the stream up. Thanks for watching. This is Psycho Metal. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. Again, it's kind of hard to judge how well I'm communicating this information because I'm not talking to anyone right now. So for the most part, the only way I can truly understand how well I'm teaching is by looking back at the VOD. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the. Anyways, thanks for watching. Been Psycho Metal. Until next time, peace.